If you've been feeling more alone lately, not because you hate people, but because something feels off, I need you to hear this. You are not broken. Sometimes isolation isn't a social failure. Sometimes it's an identity transition. Good day to you all, and welcome to Bad Day Excellence, the podcast where we take those messy, chaotic pieces of life and turn them into opportunities for growth. I'm Brian Walsh, author of Habitcraft 101, and a guy who's just trying to help people live life with pride and fulfillment and, kind of get rid of the noise and then figure out where we want to go. Today, we're going to talk about why capable people sometimes end up alone. This one's a little bit more personal. Multiple times throughout my life, I have felt alone. And, that's why I bring this up. Alone doesn't necessarily mean you're socially awkward or unwanted or anything like that. For me, when I look back at it, a lot of times these were transition windows. And believe it or not, transition windows can be very uncomfortable. So today we're going to talk about why people sometimes end up alone. Those highly capable people, they just find themselves thinking, growing, doing alone. And that's okay. I really want you to hear that again. It's okay. Why? Well, sometimes that social isolation isn't a social failure because it's this transition to something new. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to talk about the 4 traits, to look out for when to help you validate whether or not it's a transition window or maybe you do have something going on. But I will say this, always, 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 a professional will help you out with this. I'm just sharing some of my experience, and I want you to understand that, you know, a lot of this goes with thinking about your own thinking. And, when you can unlock that, you can make a lot of progress. It's really, really cool. So without further ado, what is the actual real issue here? The real issue is, again, I've been harping on this a lot lately, but drift, not defect. You know, most people that are highly capable, they know how to exist in society. They're socially competent and, they fit in and they know how to perform. And sometimes that's, you know, you use that and that ends up becoming exhausting because you're always performing. It's almost like a mask. It's almost an identity in itself. And you've heard of fake it till you make it. Well, there are certain aspects where that can be helpful, but you also have to be true to yourself. So isolation can be that first moment, like when you realize that you're isolated. That could be that moment when you realize that you've just been on autopilot and drifting socially. I read this book and I see it everywhere. People have let them tattooed on their body. Why? Because Mel Robbins wrote the let them theory. And I think people really only hear the first half, which is let them. Let your boss have a moody day. Let someone else do them or just be crappy. It shouldn't have to affect you. But even in this book, the let them theory, she talks about that you have to remember the second half, which is let me. Let me do what I can do. And this is an ancient Stoic principle. The Stoics were ancient Greeks. They were Aristotle, um, you know, Socrates, these thinkers that believe that, you can only focus your energy. You should only focus your energy on what you can control, which is your thoughts, your actions. You can influence outwards. You can push outwards a little bit, your surroundings, but the global politics and everything, that just let go. You can't change something unless you can mind control, which most people cannot. I'm pretty sure the whole telekinesis or thing isn't real, even though I love X-Men and I wish it was. I think at my ripe age of 41, I think I want Wolverine's healing because my back hurts occasionally, but that's besides the point. But again, the let them is the one part where you just let them, you do you. And then the let me is, what can I do? What is within my control? There's even a section in the let them theory that talks about people that go on this journey where they're transitioning and they're letting go of what they can't control and they find themselves isolated. And that's when I read it, I was just like, God, I have never felt so seen. So I thought it was really, really valid to bring this up because I know there are some others that feel the same way. Now, I teased it earlier. The 4 traits that prove you're not losing people. You're just outgrowing drift. And this is, again, this is the indicators, right? But if it doesn't really still feel right, go talk to a professional. It's going to help. Trust me. All right, trait number 1, internal validation is growth. This is one of the biggest aspects of it, right? Like, you no longer need other people's approval. You no longer need the attaboy, right? Or the pat on the back. In fact, you could just pat yourself on the back. Now, you start to check your ego at the door, though, right? You don't need to be chosen. You don't bend over backwards for approval from people. You don't chase the noise. I don't want you to be arrogant. This is not arrogance. This is identity stabilization. This is, I choose what matters to me. And so when you start to only rely on internal validation, you also get this wonderful thing called leverage. People cannot irk you. They cannot push you or manipulate you. And it's an amazing point. I will note that my wife, not too long ago, she was like, I don't know if I like you this way. You never react. And I was like, well, I like me because I get to choose. It's not that I don't react. It just means I'm creating more space and then I'm choosing how I want to react. And you'll hear that from people in your local, your circle of influence. You'll hear people say, well, don't work too hard, or don't do this or don't do that. Oh, you're doing too much. A lot of times that comes from their heart, but also at the same time, they don't want to lose you. They don't want to lose the version of you that they fell in love with. And so even my wife and I, like, we're still walking this path together and we grow closer together every single day. And that still doesn't stop us from growing and adjusting how we interact with each other. So let's move on to trait number 2. You've outgrown that surface energy. What is that, right? Like, you no longer tolerate the BS. Like, there's no more antisocial or superior actions, right? No more time for drama or those one-uppers in those conversations. So you say one thing, all of a sudden they have to outdo you with something. Like, you just don't have time for it. This goes back to the let them. And obviously, you know, the real pain starts to happen, right? You're tired of those dead end habits, those things that just like they're keeping you stuck and you're just, I can't handle it. And this always reminds me of Neo in the Matrix, where he was offered the red pill or the blue pill. And the red pill meant he would come out of the Matrix, and the blue pill, he would just stay in it. And he chose the red pill. And, you know, that is the power. And that is the calm. And also, one thing that you'll find out is when your standards rise, your circle often shrinks before it rebuilds. And same thing in the Matrix. Like, all of a sudden he took this red pill and now he's got 5 friends. That's it. He left everybody else back in the Matrix. So again, it's powerful when it's calm. It's that space between life's chaos and the next right step that you choose. So what about trait number 3? Trait number 3. This is actually one that I really enjoy, and I think everybody needs to learn this skill actually, which is creating boundaries. Boundaries create friction. The moment you stop over explaining yourself, you stop saying yes to everything, stop being the easy mode version of you, some people will get uncomfortable. I alluded to it earlier. They're like, I miss who you were, right? You're not the same anymore. What does that discomfort look like? Distance on both sides. You know, if they were highly drama, you're just not engaging as much. If they aren't getting the same chemical release from the interactions with you, they start to distance themselves. They're like, well, Brian's not interested. Also, misunderstanding occurs more often. This is actually what's really interesting. Sometimes when you create the space and you don't just react how they want you to react, or they take it as almost a personal attack, or that that you're disengaged, and that that creates that friction between the two. And of course, that also creates the silence. It could be awkward in our conversations. How do you project your energy when you have, let's say, a family member that's like always woe is me, woe is me? Yeah, that sounds like it's really rough. And then you just don't ask for more or anything like that. And they're waiting for you to kind of lean into it, but you don't. And then you're sort of like, okay, see you later. Awkward. This is not rejection. And again, that's where that misunderstanding, like sometimes it could feel like it's rejection, but it's not. It's identity recalibration. All right, trait number 4. This is actually another thing that I really want to take some time with. The transition windows during these seasons of life when you're transitioning, especially I'm talking from my own personal experience. There are these seasons where you are between who you were and who you're becoming. And it's, you know, we hope that like when we make a change, it just goes up, but it's never that way. Change is messy. In fact, whenever you make a change, yeah, let's talk about like use systems, like a project process change. Your productivity is going to drop and you'll squiggly line below your productivity level after a change. And the hope is that you'll eventually reach the same productivity level and you'll grow. You'll exponentially grow. That's the hope. The problem there is that like that transition, the Jeremy Bearimy, if you've ever seen A Good Place, that's how time is described. It's never linear. Right? It writes out the cursive name of Jeremy Bearimy. That Jeremy Bearimy squiggly line of life when you're in between the who you were and who you're becoming is so messy and so awkward. And sometimes it's short, sometimes it's long. It all depends on how much change you're actually trying to do. For me, when I was, my doctor had told me, hey, you're on the road to diabetes. And I was like, Doc, I just completed a triathlon. And they said to me, you're not healthy. You're fit, but you're not healthy. And so I was just like, holy crap, I need to make some major changes because I'm working out every day and I'm still not, healthy. So I found a nutritionist and personal trainer all in one. Wonderful place near me. And these people taught me how to work out, how to eat, how to sound stupid, but drink water on a consistent basis. Yes, it's a skill that you have to acquire. You have to tell yourself. Um, it took 6 months to create this version of me, which was the 4:15 in the morning wake-up call, go to the gym, work out, get home, shower, eat good food, uh, to start my day, and then go to work. It took 6 months. Um, and in fact, I would say that, kind of like because of the compound method, it started probably about 1 or 2 months, was really just 2 days a week. And then it was 3, then it was 4, then it was all 7. It, like, exponentially, like, if I could do 1 day, I could do 2 days. So it's kind of that whole transition. So that's the transition windows are messy. Here's an important guardrail, right? One of the things that I want you to avoid is romanticizing that isolation. You know, just because you're building in quiet, I don't want you to get comfortable with it, but you're not just because you're isolated doesn't mean you're better than everyone. In fact, we're humans. We need connection. We would not have grown as a species. We would have not survived had we not been a social species. You need connection. You need community. And I talked earlier about your circle of influence, right? You can pick and choose who you allow into your circle of influence. You can choose that. With the let them, if someone really just drains you, just don't engage. Give them the nod. Yep. Okay. And then move on. Only control your energy where you want to control it. And if they drive you crazy or keep going, sometimes I've had to be very blunt because they weren't catching the hint. And it's awkward, but boundaries must be set. They must be set. And in the end, you have to remember that the alignment matters way more than other people's feelings. You need to put the mask on, the oxygen mask on yourself before you can help others. And you need to be able to create the space between that life's chaos and your next right step. If you feel like you're alone right now, maybe it's not because you've lost people. Maybe it's because you stopped losing yourself. You have to remember, you're not broken. You're just ready to lead yourself again. If this feels like where you are in life, I have Momentum Reset. It's a school community. It's completely free. This exists exactly for this season in your life. And it's not about pushing harder. It's about creating space so that you can choose who you're becoming. And one of the things that I've been really trying to do is because this is really hard stuff. And a lot of times we feel drained and life's distraction dragons are everywhere. I have really begun to create systems that help people, but are fun and entertaining. In fact, this week we're having a identity funeral where we say goodbye to our old identities and celebrate what got us here. And it should be a lot of fun. So I'd love to see you join us. And there's other workshops that we do, all in honor of just keeping the momentum moving forward. I'm Brian Walsh, your guide to habit crafting and biggest champion. Thanks for tuning in to Bad Day Excellence. See you next time.